In the 1975 film The Stepford Wives, a satirical thriller directed by Brian Forbes, we delve into the eerie transformation of a suburban community. The story begins with Joanna, an aspiring photographer played by Catherine Ross, moving from bustling New York City to the seemingly perfect town of Stepford, Connecticut, with her husband and their 2 children. Joanna is initially optimistic about the fresh start, but soon notices something peculiar about the town's women. Joanna befriends Bobby, another newcomer, who shares her concerns about Stepford. Together, they observe that the local wives are unnaturally devoted to their household chores, always impeccably groomed and disturbingly submissive to their husbands. These women seem devoid of any personal ambition or individuality, contrasting sharply with Joanna and Bobby's independent spirits. As the 2 women dig deeper, they discover that many of these women were once strong, independent, and career-minded, much like themselves. They confront the Stepford Men's Association, a secretive group who is highly suspicious of their inquiries. The men's condescending dismissal of their concerns only fuels the women's determination to uncover the truth. Their investigation takes a sinister turn when Bobby undergoes a sudden and complete transformation, becoming another perfectly submissive Stepford wife. Joanna is left isolated and increasingly paranoid, realizing that the men of Stepford are systematically replacing their wives with lifelike robots designed to fulfill traditional subservient roles. In a desperate bid for freedom, Joanna attempts to flee Stepford with her children, but is captured, revealing the horrifying process behind the transformation. Joanna is forcibly replaced by a robot clone, stripped of her humanity and individuality. The final scenes show the new robot Joanna seamlessly blending in with the other Stepford wives, her original personality and aspirations completely erased. The Stepford Wives serves as a metaphor, illustrating how societal pressures and patriarchal systems can strip women of their power and individuality. This narrative finds a parallel in the promotion of the tradwife ideal, a movement advocating for women to embrace traditional submissive roles focused solely on homemaking and supporting their husbands. Much like the robotic transformation of the Stepford Wives, the tradwife narrative can be seen as a form of modern disenfranchisement. Women are encouraged to relinquish their aspirations, careers, and autonomy in favor of a life confined to domesticity. This cultural push often masks itself as a choice, but it subtly reinforces patriarchal structures that limit women's potential and reinforce gender inequality. This week, Robert Jobson's biography of Kate was released to not much fanfare. According to the Telegraph, were it not for the events of 2024, the book would be nothing but a desperately dull and often comically overwritten hagiography which portrays Catherine as little less than a secular saint who was put on this earth to steady the troubled house of Windsor and to make a stuffy monarchy appear more compassionate. And this has been my main observation for some time now. Where is Kate's voice? It's certainly not in this book. That leads me to a comment from a couple weeks back after I posted the video about Kate's changing appearance. And someone mentioned that, of course, Kate would be changed. She's much older. And look, I get that Kate is older. But for me, the comparisons go beyond age. Looking at this person, you know what I see? I see a young woman who is happy and free. Free to express herself. Free to be creative. Free to make mistakes. Free to live her life to her fullest potential. I don't see that in any current picture of Kate. Now, what I see is a woman who has submitted herself to the control of her husband. And we don't really know the circumstances under which she has relinquished her control, whether it's willing or unwilling, because she's not talking. The book also unflatteringly mentions an incident where William broke up with Kate over the phone, surrounded by his friends, and declaring his newfound freedom with a drunken dance. Folks, this is what I have suspected all along. Kate loved William, but I don't believe that he really cared as much about her as the press would try to have us believe that theirs is some ideal fairy tale romance. Prior to William proposing to Kate, it was well known that he pursued other women seriously, some of whom were in aristocratic circles, but that he was rebuffed. This is not to say that Kate was his last resort. I think had Kate's mother not interfered so much, she would probably have gone on to live a normal, middle-class life. Nothing wrong with being normal and middle class. She probably would have met someone who really loved her. Maybe she would have pursued her dreams of becoming a photographer. The book also mentions the infamous Photogate incident, where William instinctually threw Kate under the bus to exculpate himself from the embarrassment of the fallout. Yet he would like to have us believe that he is so protective of Kate and just trying to shield her, as though she is some fragile china doll that might break. Recent reports from Radar also implicate William in ongoing infidelity. Look, folks, what I'm trying to get at here is that Kate does not seem like a happy woman. She never really got a chance to live autonomously. It was always what her mother wanted or what her husband wants. That's why I keep going back to these pictures, not because she was younger, but because it was the last time she was probably ever free. And look, even if you find no fault in these people whatsoever, you have to admit that after December of last year, something dramatic occurred to cause Kensington Palace to behave in a frenzy of comical and farcical attempts to mislead the public. And given William's long-held reputation for flying off the handle, everyone feared the worst. Now, I have no idea what took place on that December night. My guess is that, now let me repeat that this is my guess and not factual, but my guess is that either Kate may have suffered a catastrophic health crisis related to an eating disorder, or Kate may have been assaulted. Now, William's propensity for violence has been an open secret for some time now, long before Harry's revelations in his book. Now, while we have no evidence that William assaulted Kate, there are numerous reports of verbal and emotional abuse, including this report that came out claiming that William and Kate have violent rows where they throw things at each other. Notice they make sure to implicate Kate here as well, even though Kate weighs maybe 110 pounds? And I think that if her absence was related to violence, it might explain why during this time she seemed to have been in hiding. Hence the bizarre behavior by William to try to fool the public into thinking they were still together. Because I just find it bizarre that the freedom she had prior to December of last year seems to have dissipated. Her appearances are severely restricted. They tell us it's because of a cancer diagnosis, not much else. And folks, they're not telling the public anything, not because they want you to respect their privacy, but simply because they don't regard you in high enough esteem to tell you anything. They simply look down on the public. You saw the reports last week about William's refusal to disclose his taxes. He may not even have paid any taxes at all. And folks, there's nothing that can be done about that. Over the past 6 decades, more and more exemptions have been written into law, granting sweeping immunity to the monarch. For William and Charles, paying taxes is on a voluntary basis, so they don't have to tell you anything. They certainly don't have to tell you the truth. If they want to lie to you, they will lie to you because they feel they are above you. And I just find it incredibly sad that there are people who willingly accept this. In my last video, I received a comment from someone who was mightily offended by my takedown of Charles, William, and Camilla last week. I believe the comment said something to the effect of, "You are mocking our culture." Well, let's examine that, shall we? What culture are you referring to? Are you talking about the pomp and ceremony celebrating a bygone era during a time when the British Empire acquired the bulk of their wealth through colonial exploitation? In other words, pillaging other cultures to enrich their own. Folks, many people don't realize that before the height of their colonial prowess, England was a backwater. They owe much of their wealth today from exploiting the riches of other lands. Besides, my main criticism has more to do with the British monarchy's exemption from laws and their poor treatment of their women, and their practice of using the press as proxies to go after anyone who challenges their power. This commenter also mentioned something about my not criticizing the regimes of the Middle East. Now look, go back and look at some of my previous videos because I have already talked about the subjugation of women in other royal houses besides Britain. But it seems to me that you are offended that anyone should criticize these people at all because you have accepted that they are better than you. This Alison Pearson article after Kate appeared at Trooping is a prime example. They have indoctrinated so many people into believing that these people are somehow superior. And when someone who has bought into that indoctrination encounters anyone expressing an idea opposed to this, their first instinct is to be offended, to be shocked. Well, let me tell you what I find shocking. I find it shocking that you would call this a constitutional monarchy while accepting that they are exempt from laws ordinary citizens could never be exempt from. Constitutional suggests an elected body. They are not elected. The parliament is elected, but the monarchy is not. And your attempt to conflate these two ideas is just laughable to me. In a constitutional monarchy, the monarch's powers are limited by laws, whereas in an absolute monarchy, the monarch has total control over the government and its people. But here's where the lines get blurred. When the monarch lobbies the parliament for more and more exemptions, as we have seen in recent years by the late queen and the current king, And when the press operates as a mouthpiece for the family where dissenting opinions unfavorable to them are suppressed, you begin to see an erosion of personal freedoms and a gradual shift toward authoritarianism. This is why it is important in any democracy for the people to keep those in power in check. During the English Civil War, there was a brief period in which England, having deposed Charles I after an ideological battle which turned into a bloody war, saw the rise of Oliver Cromwell, who briefly led the Republican government before himself dissolving the parliament and effectively becoming something of a dictator. And look, the moral of the story is that if you are living in a free society without fear of adverse consequences for expressing your opinions and calling out corruption, then vigilance is required. If you let your guard down, you can end up down a very nasty road. Now look, there's a lot about British culture that is to be celebrated. Many of the films I talk about here are British, and I can say in all certainty that growing up, British culture played a huge part in my formal years. And look, my last video was not an appeal to people to go out into the streets with pitchforks. My point was that the monarchy as we know it is being destroyed, not from without, but from within, like a gangrenous ulcer that is rotting them from the core. Look, folks, if you are lucky enough to have been born into the 0.00001% of the British population, where you have effortlessly acquired vast wealth and influence through no fault of your own, then use it for good, not to carry out personal vendettas. Many people born in the 90s don't really know who Princess Diana was. They may know of Princess Diana, but they don't really know Princess Diana. And lately, there has been a concerted effort by the British press to rewrite her history, painting her as unstable, as paranoid, as mentally unfit. And anyone who grew up with Princess Diana knows that nothing is further from the truth. During Diana's brief time as a member of the British royal family, under the title of Princess of Wales, she did so many meaningful and impactful things. Diana raised over £1 million for cancer research. She was one of the first in the royal family to talk openly about mental health. During a trip to Angola, she visited a leper colony, sitting with the patients and even touching their wounds. Most notably was her singularly transformative act of holding the hand of an AIDS patient at a time when many people still misunderstood the disease. In her later years, she walked through fields littered with landmines to raise awareness. Her actions helped lead to the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention, also known as the Ottawa Treaty. Since then, more than 55 million landmines have been destroyed. Now, folks, can you see Camilla visiting a leper colony? A couple months ago, she didn't even want to hold the hand of the French First Lady. Can you see Camilla walking through landmines? You can't, because Camilla has no interest in using her title for good. For Camilla, it's always been about clout, influence, getting as many people as possible to kiss her behind. Camilla claims to care about domestic violence with her patronage of Safe Lives, the domestic violence charity. However, the day after she threw this star-studded tea party with her friends from the press, including Jeremy Clarkson, this hate-filled, frothing at the mouth op-ed by Clarkson was released, desiring to see Meghan Markle stripped naked, paraded through the streets with people throwing excrement at her. It was so vile that even other members of the British press who regularly criticize Meghan had to condemn him. But do you know who never condemned him? That's right, Camilla. To this day, Camilla still has said nothing against this hate-filled diatribe that he released a day after attending her little party. But folks, she's on the board of a domestic violence charity. This is what I mean about using one's privilege for good and not for carrying out personal vendettas. This is why they are rotting from the inside out, because their own lies, their corruption, their greed, their envy, their never-ending grudge matches are tearing them asunder and improving the lives of no one. And we're starting to see the fissures of their internal power struggles. It was revealed last week that William, having fully assumed ownership of the Duchy of Cornwall, unceremoniously sacked Camilla's sister from the payroll for her services as an interior designer. William then promptly replaced her with his friends. Folks, this is yet another example of the nepotism and cronyism that eventually weakens any organization. Folks, how can Britain advance as a nation while they seem to be stuck in the feudal past, where favors are granted to friends and family regardless of talent? And folks, I believe that much of the unrest we see taking place today is a result of this forced stagnation and recalcitrance to change. It emanates from the top. In a recent report from the IFS, social mobility in the UK is at its worst in more than 50 years. Folks, what you are seeing in the streets of London are the bitter fruit of a system that has favored birthright over talent, cronyism over competence, and nepotism over opportunity. And sadly, things may only get worse. So sound off in the comments and let me know if you'd like me to do more videos about the current situation happening now in the UK with the riots taking place. I think much of the cause has to do with the media as well. So let me know what you think, and I'll catch you in the next video.